Hi, it's Andrew and welcome to another edition of the Performance Intelligence Podcast, the podcast about all things human performance. Optimize performance through adapting your physical, psychological, and emotional state. Sarah Rusbatch is author of the best-selling book Beyond Booze, How to Create a Life You Love Alcohol-Free. She is a multi-award-winning health and wellbeing coach, an accredited grey area drinking coach, and a leading keynote speaker. Sarah shares an authentic story, and I tell you at times it is very authentic. It's really engaging and it's real about her journey to sobriety and the impact of alcohol on mental health. Sarah tirelessly supports women and men all over the world to create and live their best lives. She hosts a thriving global online community called the Women's Wellbeing Collective, which offers a safe space where women feel seen and understood. And she now teaches leaders and entire organisations strategies to be the best versions of themselves. An English lady, married to a Kiwi, living in Perth, Western Australia, with two very Aussie children. Sarah is a true citizen of the world. Sarah Rusbatch, welcome to the podcast.
What an introduction. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I picked that up when we caught up in Perth earlier this week. You come from England, you've married a Kiwi and you're living in Perth. So let's start with that. Let's go totally off script. How did that happen?
My kids are very confused, let me tell you that. So I was backpacking around the world, aged 24, and decided to do this big brave thing, leave my London job and go travel the world on my own. And I landed, did the whole of Southeast Asia, did the whole of the East Coast, and then flew over to Perth and decided to do a trip from Perth to Broome. And the Kiwi that is now my husband was the bus driver.
Sarah, you know you don't marry the bus driver. How many other young women and men, because I was a Kentucky tourist one day as well, I fell in love. I fell in love. I didn't know we were going to go here with a bus driver in Italy. She was, like nothing happened. Like she didn't know I existed.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it was quite the wedding speeches were great, put it that way.
Were your friends saying, Sarah, you don't marry a bus driver from Perth?
Yeah, exactly. I got back to London and they're like, and he's called Gus. So he was just like, always Gus the bus. And it was just like, are you still seeing that Gus the bus guy? And it was like, yeah, I brought him back to London with me. So yeah, so that's, so we spent that time in London. And then after we had our first child, decided, let's go live somewhere with sunshine and blue sky and the outdoor life. And Gus grew up on a farm. He wanted that outdoor lifestyle for our kids. And we were like, well, Perth's been a great spot for us so far. Let's go and bring up our kids there. So we moved here in 2010.
When Gus said, let's go somewhere where there's a lot of sunshine, you probably thought he was talking Brighton by the sea, not Brighton, Victoria. Going from London to Perth, it's a big trip and it's been a really big action-packed journey for you. So to break it down, 4 rough areas today I'd like to discuss. One is your story. I'd really love to go back in the beginning. And we said before we went on air, you said to me, do we go high level or warts and all? And my response to you was?
Let's go warts and all.
Yeah, let's make it real. 2, the difference between an alcoholic and a grey area drinker. I first heard of you on Craig Harper's podcast, Hello Harps, and it really triggered an interest in me. I'm sure I've had grey area drinking at times in my life. I'm sure some of my friends still to this day have grey area drinking. So let's get the definition or the clarity between the two. 3, the effects on all the L's, the physical, the psychological, the emotional, even the financial. And then 4, let's look at what people do. I'm going to add 5 after our chat the other day. Tell us about what you're doing outside of grey area drinking, the wonderful work you're doing with mines and banks and other institutions. So before we get to 5, let's wind back in the beginning.
I started drinking at 14. I grew up in the north of England. And, hindsight's a wonderful thing. My parents, would I describe them as having a dysfunctional relationship with alcohol? My dad, definitely. It was a heavy social house. So not alcoholism, but there was a lot of socializing. And little Sarah growing up, the only way she saw her parents socialize was with alcohol, because that was the way, right? In the 80s and 90s, there were dinner parties. I lived in Scotland for a while. I can remember my house just being full of men in kilts, drinking whiskey, really drunk. And all this laughter would be coming from the dining room that I wasn't allowed in. And I would sit at the top of the stairs and I'd just be like looking through, trying to get a glimpse of one of the grown-ups. And I just thought, that's what you do to have fun when you're a grown-up. So little Sarah created that very strong belief at a very young age that the way that adults have fun is with alcohol. By the time I was 14, I'd been to 5 different schools and had very quickly worked out, or had to work out, how do I get people to like me? How do I fit in? How do I make friends? And it's not easy, right? It's hard as a kid to do that. And the hardest move we did was when I was 13 and we moved from Scotland to England. And if you know anything about the rivalry between the Scots and the English, it's quite strong. And I had a very thick Scottish accent, a terrible perm, spotty skin. And we'd moved from this quite rough area where I lived, going to a very normal high school that had no school uniform, to a very posh all-girls school in Cheshire where the girls played lacrosse and netball at weekends and hockey and like I was at a school where everyone was smoking fags and doing all sorts in the toilets. And so this was so new and I was like a fish out of water. And looking back, I was so tense all the time. And then at 14, alcohol came into the equation. And very quickly I realized, this is a great way to fit in. This is a great way to make friends. This is a great way to get people to like you. Because I started getting feedback, Andrew, and the feedback was, you're so fun when you're drunk. You're hilarious when you're drunk. So when you start getting that feedback, and a big part of your life has been, how do I fit in? And you get feedback that that's how it works. That's what you start doing. And so from that age on, alcohol was very present.
And that family of origin, so many people I coach, and they'll say to me under stress, oh my God, I'm just like her or I'm just like him. I've done this enough then to say, you're talking about a parent, a significant other, a guardian. Yes, my father, my mother. Why am I just like him or her, even though I didn't want to be like that? Well, the conditioning is so strong. So you grew up in that household. As you were explaining that, it sounds a little bit like the good part of 4 weddings and a funeral, the frivolity, the fun, the engagement, people there with music. So you're seeing that as a young girl, literally peering through the door going, oh, that's what it means to be an adult. And then you go to a different environment because you've moved and you've got that social anxiety. How do I fit in? So I can see how that played out to get to that stage. At 14, year 9, year 10?
Yeah, year 9 that would have been. So it was fairly young, but I mean, that was pretty standard back in the UK in, the late 80s, early 90s. That was just kind of what people were doing. And so that then led to alcohol being present all the time. Then I went to university, and the drinking culture at uni in the UK is very much like alcohol first and studies second. So it was 3 years of drinking, but again, using alcohol to create connection, using alcohol as a way to meet people, Freshers Week and everything like that, and forming friendships. Because this is the thing about grey area drinkers is we tend to surround ourselves with other grey area drinkers. So I love drinking. So of course I'm not going to be attracted to becoming friends with someone who doesn't drink, because then that makes me feel uncomfortable about my drinking.
What's wrong with you? Harden up. What do you mean you're not drinking?
Oh my God, you're so boring.
And just to set context for our listeners, so you're at university, and growing up, we're a similar vintage. For me, I did sports science, and even there was a heavy drinking culture. You train hard and you drink harder as well. I didn't drink a lot, especially in my early 20s. I was a 1 or 2 can screamer. I wasn't very piss fit, you would say in Australia. But to set context at uni, how many nights, how many days would you be drinking?
4 or 5 nights.
4 or 5 nights. And what would an average night consist of?
Like we would drink wine in our uni house before we went out, and it was like £1.29 for a cheap bottle of Lambrusco. So when you're a student back then, we would all get we'd maybe share 1 between 2 before you went out. And we used to go to this club where it was £3 to get in. So that's $6, which was very expensive, but all your spirits were free. So you only had to pay for the mixer. So you would get a quadruple vodka and Coke for 20p. And that was pretty standard.
What you can't see and what our people can't see who are watching this on YouTube, the wizard, who everyone knows, the wizard on the podcast, is just sitting here going, was that wizard an acknowledgement of you wish those days were here, or were you sort of going, oh, wow, this chick really piss fit? Bit of both.
Yeah.
So as a drinking culture, I'm trying to, again, get granularity on it. standard drinks? That'd be 10, 15 plus every serving, every night?
Oh, maybe not as many as that. I'd say 8 to 10 would be very normal, a few nights a week. And then on the nights that you weren't drinking, you were hungover and you were recovering. And this was the era as well where we were starting to get this real, particularly in the UK, the rise of the ladette culture. So it was a real movement where women could be as we could drink like the men. We could match the lads pint for pint. We didn't need to stay at home and have a man paying for us. It was this real female empowerment time. It was the Spice Girls.
Carrie
it was
Bradshaw, Sex and the
exactly.
City, Miranda.
Yeah. And you had Samantha and Carrie, and they were drinking their Cosmopolitans and having one night stands, and it was girl
Samantha
power
could
everywhere.
be with who she wanted. And originally everyone was like, oh my God, we have words for that in different countries. And then it started, and even with my mates, it was like, actually, why not? Why can't a female have a one night stand if she wants to?
Yeah.
And not be judged.
Exactly. And this was the era that I was growing up in. This was my early 20s where all of this movement was happening. And so after university, I went to university in the north of England and then moved straight to London and got a job working in recruitment in investment banking. So the fourth stage of the interview process, it was all graduates that worked there. The fourth stage of the interview process was going what they called a drink up, where you went to the local pub and you did shots of flaming sambuca to see how well you could handle your booze to decide if you would get offered the job or not.
That was seriously part of the interview process. So you'd been through the whole look at your experience. Was there any psychometric testing?
No. So there was 3 stages of interview before you got to the drink up. So they were pretty thorough, but then it was the team fit, they called it. Like we had, after I joined the company, we had meetings the next day. We were like, nah, she didn't drink enough. Nah. We didn't hire people based on the fact that they seemed a bit boring and didn't engage enough in the flaming sambucas. And so it was like, nah, not one for us.
Now, pause in the program, young children, because we do have a number of millennials and even younger generations listening to this podcast. And before you judge, look, when I entered the workforce as well, when I had a previous business bought by Accor, it was a real drinking culture. And I just finished as an athlete, as a middle distance runner. And then when I was in cricket, the Australian cricket team, every night when you're on tour, when we'd be over for an Ashes tour, you'd have at easily 2 or 3. What has changed, and we'll get to this, culture has changed. There's a lot more diversity. It literally used to be young'uns that the way to do team building was the boss, male or female, would put on booze on a Friday afternoon. And if you were Muslim or if you didn't drink alcohol or you had other beliefs that didn't align you to drinking alcohol, you were totally ostracized. What I love, it has changed, right? It's a lot more inclusive. But we're painting the picture and gosh, you've just taken me back to, it was the culture and to fit in to especially some groups, which are either drink or you're not a part of that group.
Yeah. And, the recruitment industry, much like, many industries were like this. I've got friends who were brokers, but we worked in the financial sector and this was the late 90s and every deal was done over, pints at the pub or fancy restaurants. And so a lot of my job at that time was wining and dining clients to win new business. And I was very, very good at it because I was a very good drinker, but B, I had a real spirit. I really, absolutely loved my job. I loved the fact that we had this real team environment. Again, it was bringing about that connection that I had craved all my life. And having been, the new girl, always wanting to fit in, it was somewhere that I really felt like I had a family and it was home. And then I decided to go traveling. And that was when I met Gus, the bus driver. And of course, that was a year of heavy partying. And then we moved back to London and went back into a more senior executive search firm where I was doing very senior level executive recruitment. This was the early 2000s. Again, like very boozy and was very successful, really enjoyed it. And then things started to change. And when I say change, we got married and we had a baby.
What age? Can we just timestamp? How old were you?
So I got married at 30, and then we had our first baby when I was 33. And then we made the decision to move to Australia. Just to caveat that, there was absolutely no issue with me not drinking when I was pregnant. I wasn't a dependent user of alcohol. And really important to mention here, in all those times in London, I was never drinking at home, unless we were having a party or a dinner party. It wasn't something I did to relieve stress. It wasn't something I felt like I needed. It was just a social thing. It was just that I socialized a lot. And so I created this identity for myself. I'm Sarah, the party girl. I'm a big drinker, but that's because I socialize all the time. And outside of that, alcohol simply wasn't problematic. And I didn't really get hangovers. Like, it's incredible what we can actually put into our body and still manage to get up after 4 hours sleep, a huge bender, smoking 20 Marlboro Lights, and then get up 4 hours later and go and work a full day and do it again the following night.
I was going to go down that rabbit hole, because for a lot of people, when they drink, it's cigarettes and it's other substances as well. So were you a social smoker as well? So you wouldn't smoke outside, but when you were drinking, so you wouldn't smoke outside a social setting with alcohol, but you would smoke a pack of fags.
Exactly.
Marlboro Lights when you're out, yeah.
Was not someone that woke up and had a cigarette, but when I was drinking, I was the worst person because I never bought my own cigarettes. And so as soon as I'd had a drink, I was like taking them off everyone else. It was okay back then because they were cheap. You wouldn't want to do that now.
And just to close out the scene, this is not the Austin Powers. Yeah, groovy, baby. That was the 60s. So you've got the 90s in London. Drugs, was it part of that environment, or was it just the start of that? Was that sort of on the fringe?
That was on the fringe. So that was very much, a lot of people I knew were very heavily involved. And I had times of dabbling, but it certainly wasn't the area that I went down. And for me, it was the partying, the social bars, and everything that London had to offer in terms of, it was a real moment in time when we were going down this pathway of female empowerment, like I said before, the drinking culture, the hedonism. Like, Gus and I were earning really good money. We had no kids. We had no responsibilities. We could go, should we go to Saint-Tropez this weekend? Should we go to Paris this weekend? Like, it was this absolute hedonistic time that I kind of look back on and go, wow, that really was my life. Like, we were doing weekends in New York.
School runs and you've got the kids. You've got 2 kids, right?
Yeah.
And when you're getting up early, as you are at the moment, training for a marathon, and you're squeezing it all in, you do that crystal ball backwards and go, did I really do that? Like, today I've got up, I've made school lunches, I've done the drop off, I've done a podcast, spoken to a few women, and yeah, this is a different life to what I was living.
Yeah, it always makes me laugh because the only time I ever saw 5 a.m. was when I was coming home. And now, like, 5 a.m. is my regular wake up time. And so I always have a little smile. And so we got married and we had a baby, and alcohol just went off, wasn't even part of my life. And then we made the decision to move to Australia. And I completely underestimated the impact that would have on my emotional and mental well-being. So we got to Australia and William was 9 months old and I fell pregnant again pretty much as soon as we got here. So that took away something for me, which had been my way of making friends, had always been through alcohol. And I was pregnant as soon as we got here. So there was no drinking and there was no way, well, how do you make friends and how do you get people to like you when you can't drink with them? Because honestly, I had not done it all through London, all through my drinking career, like drinking career in terms of working and everything like that. Alcohol had been the segue to connection.
And you'd had success, which had reinforced that. So you have this feedback loop as well. We talk about competence, capability. You do anything and over time and you get competent at it, or greater capabilities, you get more confidence, you get more confidence. So it actually spirals. Whether it's good or bad, it creates this skill set that you go back to, hey, I can do this. This is how I've connected with friends. It goes back to a young girl watching parents and the 14-year-old girl connecting. So this is just so deep, your schema, those collection of thoughts just wired, entrenched in you.
Yeah. And then because I really struggled to make friends, it even more reinforced the belief that the only way to make friends is by drinking. Because we moved to a beautiful area of Perth, but it was quite it wasn't the area where all the Brits live. And I do always look back and go, had we gone to that area, I think it may have been a hell of a lot easier. But we decided not to, because my husband was like, I've just left the UK. I haven't moved to Perth to live in Little Britain. Let's go to where all the Perth people live. So we did. But what I found was there was a lot of cliques of people that had been friends for a very, very long time. It's not a transient environment. People are still friends with who they've been friends with since they were 4. And I really struggled to really build those connections, because my kids were not school age yet. So you don't have that familiarity of, being at the school gate and meeting mums and everything. I was going to monkey music and baby swimming and things like that, and just struggling. And all through my pregnancy with Scarlett, I was really, really struggling, to the point I can remember going to see a counsellor and just saying, I'm really not coping very well. And I remember her reflecting back to me and just saying, let's just reflect on how different your life is right now. You've moved to the other side of the world. You've become a first-time mum with a 9-month-old that you've got now, plus you're pregnant with another. You've got no close friendships around you. You're not working, which I can hear you got a huge sense of fulfillment and sense of achievement from. You're at home all day on your own. Let's just get some understanding, Sarah, of the fact that what you're dealing with is a lot. And I was like, yeah, there was a lot going on.
There's a scale called Holmes Ray, and that scale is major life events, and they give points. And if you're around 250 or 300 points, they say there's been significant shift or stress in your life. 100 points is a new relationship, so ending or starting a new relationship. Relocating to a different country is on the point scale. Not having work or starting a new job, having a baby. The other one that's big in there is death of someone close to you. So on my recollection, you're sitting at 350, 400 points, and you're in Perth, which I love Perth, but you can feel isolated. You've got Bali. You can get on a plane and go up and have the weekend in Bali, but you're used to going to Saint-Tropez. So to hop on a plane for you to go anywhere, it's 4 hours. So I can just get that sense of understanding exactly where were you living in London? Just to paint the scene even more.
In Clapham, so right in the heart.
Good old Clapham.
Yeah.
There would have been a walkabout pub. There is a walkabout at Clapham, isn't there?
No, it's Shepherd's Bush.
Ah, Shepherd's Bush. I've been to the one at Shepherd's Bush, yes. So you got that environment, friends, albeit transient friends, but when you're all on that cans and having fags and whatever, you feel like your besties, and then you go there, young child, 9 months, one on the way. You must have felt so isolated. You must have felt so lonely.
I did. I felt all of those things. I've always been a very, very independent, very capable person and prided myself on that. So I was beating myself up about the fact that I wasn't happier, because on paper I had everything that I wanted. I'd moved to Australia, like it'd been a dream since I was a little girl. I had blue sky and sunshine every day. I had a healthy baby boy and a healthy baby on the way. We had enough money that I didn't have to work and I could take time off to be with our beautiful children while my husband set up a business. So on paper, I was like, I should be happy. But I was so lonely and I was so homesick. And that ultimately, as soon as Scarlett was born and I stopped breastfeeding, those feelings just became more and more and more. And then I went back to drinking.
And just pause and we'll come to that. When someone says should, would, could, if, might, maybe, I'll make the joke, and I picked this up from Dr. Susie Green at Sydney University in the coaching psychology degree. You end up shoulding all over yourself. So it's just interesting, that language of should. And then my understanding, all of your success at that stage was external, extrinsic, exogenous. I drink and I get clients and I make more money. I'm the fun party girl. So it was very much around that FOPO. Dr. Michael Gervais talks about fear of other people's opinion. So I can't help but think you'd created this persona, because it's not your real person, it's a persona, that it's Sarah the party girl, Sarah the fun chick, Sarah the piss tank, that can party. And when you're even saying that in the recruiting firm, oh no, he or she didn't drink enough. So you'd created this persona that wasn't the grounded you, but you didn't know the difference between the two. And then you're there isolated. We've spoken about all those major life events. So this is the catalyst for what you would say is a perfect storm.
Yeah. And also, like, even adding to what you've just said there, all of my external work, like the extrinsic support and relief that I got through my work, was that I worked in a sales environment and I was always, without doubt, the top biller all the time. So all the time, my actions externally got me praise. They got me acknowledgement. They made me feel good about myself. So I'd never had to go inside, because it had always been there for me externally, through work, through friendships, through being popular, through drinking, through socializing. Everything had been external. So when I was in this situation on my own and I had to go internal, there was nothing there because I'd never done it before. And
you had a very, very strong performance-based identity. You had built up this identity and you had lots of feedback, and that made you feel good. But you hadn't balanced that out with a purpose-based identity, which is more around meaning and values and purpose. Yours was more about that external success and money and partying and having fun. Now, there's an and. You can have a performance-based identity and a purpose-based identity, and you get the nice blend between the two. So we'll pick up the story. I think people know where this is going to go. But it's fascinating talking to you, and I've heard you, as I mentioned, on Harps's podcast. But I just wanted to pull on that thread a little bit more. Had you thought about that? Had you made that connection upon reflection?
No, not in the way that you've just made me see it. And I can see how it's beautiful, because I can see how far I've come. And I just have this little warm peace in my heart right now that goes, yeah, that is how it was, but that is not how it is now. And that is so good.
I can feel the buzz, like you were getting a bit emotional.
Yeah, because I've done a lot of work on myself since then, because I had to. And it's been life-changing, but we can come on to that in a minute. So the drinking then became something that for the first time I was doing at home on my own. So it was not during the day. So it was never during the day. It was never when I was with the kids. But by 3 o'clock, I'd be starting to look forward to it. Because the thing about alcohol is it makes all those uncomfortable feelings go away. So the feelings of loneliness, the feelings of homesickness, I wasn't getting my dopamine hits anymore, because, I used to get my dopamine hits at work and with my connections and everything like that. And I wasn't. So I was getting a big fat dopamine hit sitting on the outdoor sofa, drinking a bottle of wine, smoking a fag once the kids had gone to bed. And that became my way of self-soothing.
Interesting. You said all your problems go away until.
But in that moment, because that's the thing about alcohol, it's all short term, and the problems didn't start immediately. And that's the other thing about alcohol, particularly for grey area drinking, is I was never drinking enough that I needed a drink in the morning. I was never drinking enough that I had to stay in bed for the day vomiting. I was able to drink, and then I would go to bed, and then I would get up, and then I would function. And by this point, fast forward a year or two, I'd set up my own recruitment business again here in Perth. So I was running my own business, but that brought with it probably some of the reasons why the drinking escalated, because I didn't have connection, whereas I'm someone that loves connection and craves connection. So I was on my own, and I didn't have anyone to answer to. So if I wanted to move a meeting because I couldn't be asked working and I just wanted to lie in bed and play Candy Crush, then I could do that, because there was no one that I had to have accountability to. Not that I did that very often, but there were definitely some days where I did that. And that's what I mean. It was never that I needed to be in bed vomiting, but there was a lot of can't be asked. There was just that feeling a lot of the time of, oh, yeah, right, okay, got to do some work today. And I'm a very driven, very self-motivated person, but alcohol was starting very subtly to rob me of that. But when it's subtle, you don't realise it's happening.
And by now, you're mid-30s?
Yeah, so no, I'd probably be late 30s by now. So I had Scarlett at 35. And so this was kind of late 30s. And this is the thing for women as well, is we can't metabolize alcohol anyway as well as a man does. But once we get into our late 30s, early 40s, there's a whole load of other stuff that goes on for women that means that we cannot metabolize it even worse than before. So there's an enzyme called ALDH, alcohol dehydrogenase, that it allows the human body to break down alcohol and remove it as effectively as possible, because alcohol is a poison to the human body. Women produce less of this enzyme anyway, and from our late 30s onwards, even less.
Yeah. And to balance this out, for people listening to this in your 20s, you can go out all night, drink what you want. Some people take what they want, rock in the next day. How was your night, Sarah? Great. I got to bed at 5 a.m. 5 a.m.? Really? Have you had any sleep? Nah. And I'm going to go out again tonight. What? You're in your 20s. In your 30s, it catches up a little bit. And then in your 40s, wait until you get into your 5s and your 50s. Like, oh, gosh, I sometimes daydream and go, oh, I'm going to have the best weekend. I'm going to be in bed at 9:30. I'm going to have a quiet night, spend time with my partner, which she'll often cook a beautiful meal. It changes so much. But you're there in your 30s. You're not metabolizing alcohol as much. You'd shifted from this was partying to now you're soothing.
Yeah. And again, I had rules. So this is the other thing for grey area drinkers. We have rules, because a part of me had probably, even though it wasn't conscious, I think a subconscious part of me had started to realise that alcohol, it was causing me issues. I didn't want to bring it into the full awareness, but there was a part of me that was aware. So I had rules, and the rules were I don't drink on a Monday and Tuesday. I don't drink before 5 o'clock. I don't drink white wine on an empty stomach. So I had these rules that lulled me into this false sense of, well, I don't have a problem, because the only people that have a problem, they drink every day. They drink in the morning, they have to stay in bed all day, and they can't take breaks. And that was the other thing. I would test myself and I would take these breaks from booze. And because I could do it, I was like, no, it's fine. So I clearly don't have a problem. I'm just, it's not an issue. It can't be alcohol. It must be something else that's making me feel so shit all the time. It must be something else, because I've proven that I don't have a problem. And society tells us that you only have a problem if you fit these certain criteria. So I was testing myself, but in my mind, I was passing every test that I set myself. But I wasn't. So alcohol was impacting my sleep, because it does, and particularly for women. So it got to the point where, like, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, it is the loneliest time in the world. When you wake up and you are tossing and turning, it's alcohol induced. You can't get back to sleep. You're full of anxiety. You're promising yourself, God, right, I'm not going to drink this week. Oh my God, I can't believe I drank last week. Like, you've got all of this negative self-talk, and it's the worst. So the way that I avoided that, I thought, I've got the perfect solution. I'll take a sleeping tablet every time I drink, and then I will bypass the 3 a.m. wake up. So that's what I did. So you can imagine the fogginess and the lethargy and the just can't be arsed-itis that I felt every morning.
Well, your body, you're running a physiological experiment. You've got antidepressants, and then you're taking sleep medication. And then to get going, would you take caffeine?
Of course, yeah.
So then you're fueling it with caffeine. So you're hitting your adenosine system massively. And your body would have just been saying, what the fuck are you doing to me, girlfriend?
Yeah. And then I would go to the gym, because I would prove to myself, gym was kind of like a punishment for the alcohol. I was putting on weight, so I was trying to, again, it's not the alcohol, I've just got to try harder at the gym. And so I again, because I could go to the gym, I never felt hungover, I just felt tired. Like, that was the background sentence to my 30s and early 40s. I'm not hungover, I'm just tired. And that was just how I always felt. And I was exercising. I even ran half marathons. Like, I was doing the things that made me feel like it's not problematic. And then 2017, I was 41, and there were 2 incidents that, looking back now, were the turning point. So the first was I'd gone to a 40th, and I probably drank 3/4 of a bottle of champagne before I even got there. It was one of those parties where serving staff are just topping up your drink the whole time. So, and I'm a fast drinker, so I was drinking fast. My drink was being topped up fast. I could feel myself getting drunk. And then I went outside for a cigarette, and I crouched down to put it out. And because I was wearing high heels and because I was drunk, I had no reflexes. And I toppled forward and landed face first on the concrete driveway. And so split my lip, split my nose, blood, and got taken home and put to bed. And I woke up the following morning to Scarlett was 5, and she was standing beside my bed. And she said, "Mummy, what happened to your face?" And you know that moment, that sick dread feeling where all the memories come back, and I just felt so much shame, so much disgust, so much self-loathing, that A, I'd got to the point where I'd fallen over and smashed my face, and B, that my daughter was waking me up and looking at me. There was blood all over the pillowcase. And I went to the pharmacy and I was like, I just need something to make all these bruises and cuts and everything go down quickly. And the pharmacist gave me ibuprofen and arnica and all of those things. And then she slipped me a card, and the card was a helpline for domestic violence. And in that moment, I was just horrified, like, tears, really promising myself that I would change, but I didn't. And I carried on drinking. And then it was only 3 weeks later, I had another friend's birthday. It was the year of the 40th. And we'd gone to one of those brunches, all you can drink champagne for 2 hours for $50. And we started at 12 and I got home at 2 the following morning. And this time I got woken up by my son standing at the end of my bed. And he was like, "Come on, Mum, we've got to go to cricket." And my husband had gone on a boys' fishing trip early that morning. So he'd left at 5 a.m. when I was passed out. And I couldn't take William to cricket because I was still over the limit. And I knew I was over the limit, like I was shaking and felt so nauseous. And I had to lie to him and tell him that it had been cancelled because I just couldn't believe that I was still over the limit on a Sunday morning, that I couldn't drive him to the thing that he loves doing the most in the world. And those 2 incidents, as hard as they were, on that Sunday after the cricket incident, I said to myself, I'm going to do 21 days off. Right, that's it. I'm going to do a 21-day detox. That's what they say it takes to change a habit. And I committed. And then I think the universe works in ways that we want it to sometimes. I was scrolling Facebook, as you do when you're hungover and got no energy and no, mental clarity. And someone in my running group posted that they'd read a book about changing your relationship with alcohol. And I was like, it's a sign. So I ordered the book and I read it. And the 21 days turned into 100. And this was my first experiment of being me as a grown-up adult woman without alcohol. And I really liked her. And I really liked the woman that I discovered that I was behind Sarah, the party girl. So it was a really incredible experiment. And, I couldn't believe the change in my anxiety had disappeared. My sleep had improved. My energy had improved. My mindset and my positive well-being had improved. Everything was so much better.
What did you like about her so much?
She was so kind. The way she talked, the voice in my head, it had gone from being, "You're such a loser. You're so rubbish at things. You're so shit. You said you were going to do this and you didn't do it," to her being like my cheerleader. And she was like, "Yay, go you. We're going to do another day. We're going to do another day." And I really noticed how much more positive I felt and how much calmer I was with the kids, and just everything like that really changed.
Were you doing work? So you read the book. Were you getting any coaching or any counselling or psychology? Or was it just that you'd made that natural break, not drinking? We talk about making meaning in psychology is you need space and time. And when you're busy partying and recruiting and all that external rewards, you're building this persona, and then suddenly you're there, you've literally smashed your face. I can imagine that was really, really confronting, getting that card slipped to you. And I've got a couple of questions to come back on Gus in a moment too. And then you have the second incident, and then you go from 21 days to 100. So you just suddenly started to have self-compassion. So you replaced loathing with compassion. Did you replace all that external, got to be the party girl, with, hey, actually being by myself, I like her more than I realised?
Yeah. And like, this was 2017, so there was not the alcohol-free movement that there is now. So there wasn't all the podcasts and books and support groups and everything, but there was a little bit. So there were I think 1 year No Beer had started in the UK. And so I think I was a member of that Facebook group, and there was a couple of books out there that I'd started looking at. So there was a little bit of information, but it was pretty much all on my own. I was just being led by what felt right. And it was just like, I'm just going to keep going with this. And then the other thing that massively changed was in that 100 days, I made more money in my recruitment business than I'd made in 12 months, the previous 12 months, because there was not a single bit of can't be arsed-itis. It was literally like every day I'm jumping out of bed because I've had loads of sleep, and I'm actually getting restorative sleep without sleeping tablets, and I'm exercising in the morning. And it's actually exercise that I love, as opposed to it being a punishment. And then I'm sitting down at my desk and I'm doing solid hours of work where I'm not sending an email instead of making a phone call, because I can't be asked, speaking to someone. I was like getting on the phone, I was doing all the things. And so my business skyrocketed. And that, all of the things were just feeding this positivity. And what I wasn't doing, which I can see now is a really powerful technique, which I didn't even know I was doing, was I was focusing on everything that I was gaining. And I wasn't sat there thinking about what I was losing. And I think that's the key, I think, to being successful with any kind of change, is really focusing on the positives. And I really felt that. I really, really felt all the positives I was getting. I was really noticing it. But what I wasn't prepared for was the peer pressure, because, of course, I was Sarah the party girl.
It's like you're reading my mind. So how did this go, Sarah? Next time you went to a party, 100 days in, you're getting all this external feedback. So there's a feedback mechanism there. I'm not drinking. I'm making more money in 3 months than I made in 12 months. This is good. I'm sure you felt more present as a mother. You felt more present with Gus. You felt healthier, fitter, more vibrant. You noticed those birds singing. Wow, there's a seasonal change I maybe haven't noticed the last 5 years. And then you go to that moment, go on, just have one. What's wrong with you?
Totally. Or the best line I got from someone at the school gate was, oh, let's catch up when you're drinking again.
Really? You're boring shit when you're not drinking, but the fun girl, get her going, give me a ring. Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't do things the way I wish I'd done them, because I didn't know how to do it better. So I was just, there wasn't the books and everything. And I've written all about this in my book, and what I would have done in hindsight, which is, in hindsight, what I would have done is I would have said to my husband, and I would have said to my friends, I'm struggling with my mental health. I'm struggling with anxiety. And the other thing is, I had been to my GP and said to her, I've got more anxiety than I've ever had in my life. And at no point did the alcohol conversation come up, but she happily gave me a script for anti-anxiety meds.
See, I thought, because I listened to the start of Harp's podcast, I didn't listen to all of it. I thought, oh, what a great message. I didn't realise, though, after the 100 days, you went back to it.
Yeah, so I thought, I'm fixed now. I've done 100 days. I'll be able to be a moderate drinker. And so I went out for dinner that night with my husband, my best friend and her husband. I had a glass of wine and I was like, oh, look at me go. I am just a normal drinker now. I can just sit on my one glass of wine. I don't want any more. I don't need any more. This is who I am. And within 2 weeks, I was back to drinking the same amount as before, because that is how it works. I was not physically addicted to alcohol, but I was emotionally addicted to alcohol. And as soon as we've created a neural pathway in the brain that says, when I'm stressed or when I feel X, alcohol makes that go away. And if you've let alcohol back into your life in any way, the moment you feel that thing, the brain goes, have a drink, have a drink. And so that was what happened. Then it was 2 years from that point before I finally stopped. And that was an important part of my journey, because it was 2 years of taking breaks, going back to drinking, taking breaks, going back to drinking. And I had to go through that process because I had to prove to myself I was never going to be a moderate drinker, and moderation was never going to work, which is the case for most grey area drinkers. And secondly, I had really powerful data, which is everything in my life is better when I don't drink. Why on earth am I fighting to be able to moderate this substance that destroys my sleep, my energy, how I parent, how I show up at work, how much money I make? Like, why am I fighting to keep it in my life? It's bonkers. And when I reframed it in that way, I was like, done. So April 2019, I had my last drink.
When did you step back and go, Cat Stevens, cat's in the cradle? I've become him, I've become her. Because again, I can't help but think this has parlayed what you grew up with, watching those parties. You said at the start your dad wasn't a grey area drinker, probably was an alcoholic. Did you have a moment where you just stood back and went, oh, fudge, well, I've become him, I've become her?
Not until I started doing therapy, because I think I was in denial and I didn't want it to be true. And so I was very good at telling myself different stories. And so I think, it was only through then going and doing some schema therapy that I did once I finally quit booze in 2019 that I was able to see the patterns, but then also have such pride in the fact that I'd broken that legacy.
When I asked that question, you paused and I could see you breathe. What did you feel when I asked you that question?
Shame.
Really?
Fear and shame that I had been like that for a period. But then that softened and it became, it's all right, Sarah, because you changed. You changed that legacy. And, my kids were 7 and 9 when I stopped drinking. Scarlett can't even remember me as a drinker. So that feels good to me.
I can see why you are such a wonderful coach, and we're going to get to your programs, because I'm sure there's people already who are searching up your website and wanting to go and do your wonderful programs. I didn't think you would have said fear and shame, because when you said...
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's still there, but you've replaced that, or does it not go away? It's there, but it's not the central character. Does a question like that remind you of, or does it frustrate you in some ways that you spent so long doing that, not being able to break that feedback loop?
I think it's the hardest thing when you have a behaviour like alcohol, and I wasn't, as we talked about, it wasn't alcoholism, but it was still significant alcohol use. Alcohol makes us act in a way that is so far from our authentic self that I think it's really hard not to feel shame about the way that you've acted at times. And it's the part that the women I coach struggle with the most, is the shame of how they've acted under the influence of alcohol. It's not like smoking. It's not like sugar. It's not like scrolling on your phone. Alcohol actually impairs your brain so that you say and do things that you would never do when you were sober. And that brings a lot of shame. And so there is shame that I at times behaved in a way that I would never have wanted to in front of my kids when I've been drinking.
We've mentioned a few times, or you've mentioned a few times, there's grey area drinking and alcoholism. Can you give us a definition? What is the definition, or what's the delineation between the two?
So alcoholism is, we don't use that term in the health world anymore. We talk about alcohol use disorder being mild, moderate, or severe. And severe alcohol use disorder would be alcoholism. So that's someone with physical dependency on alcohol who would need to have medical support to withdraw, because alcohol is one of only 3 substances that the human body can die from withdrawal from. And so that's someone with physical dependency who is waking up with shakes. If they go 24 hours without drinking, they can start to get hallucinations and vomit, and that's very extreme. Grey area drinking describes people who drink regularly, consistently, but they're not reaching the criteria for physical dependence, but nor are they a take it or leave it drinker. So what do I mean by a take it or leave it drinker? my friend Nat, she's the kind of person that you go to the bar with her and you're like, Nat, do you want a drink? But she'll stand there, she'll be like, do I want a drink? Do I want a drink? Do I want a drink? No, I'll have a Diet Coke. Like, that was never me. I was never the, do I want a drink? I probably had half a bottle of wine before I got to the pub. So that's a take it or leave it drinker. They just don't care. And so how do you know if you're a take it or leave it drinker or a grey area drinker? And there's a great question for your audience to reflect on. If I said to you now, let's do 90 days off alcohol from tomorrow. Let's just do 90 days off. How does that make you feel? Because if you're a take it or leave it drinker, you're going to be like, Nat would be like, sure, okay, let's do 90 days off. If you are like, like if fear comes up, if like excuses come up, if there's any kind of like strong reaction to that question, then we're probably sitting in the grey area.
So personally now it would be easy because I'll go a couple of months and Tony and I, a couple of months of February, and we'll often pick September, align it with a fast just to tighten everything up and not drink alcohol. And there's big changes physically, psychologically, especially body fat, adipose tissue. So now easy. After going through a marriage breakdown, and I definitely used alcohol and dating as a crutch. And there are periods there where, I was drinking most nights, and I'd gone from athlete not drinking much at all. So it's insidious, and it's not overnight, it's the creep. And then another area, I wasn't sure whether we'd talk about this, but you've sort of insinuated, so let's go there and you can close it out if you want. But for a lot of people, it's dating. And you date, you drink, it increases the likelihood of having physical connection. And for a lot of people who I've worked with, they then go, well, how am I going to meet someone if I don't drink? How am I going to have sex? Or will I enjoy sex? Will I actually be comfortable in my body naked in front of someone else if I'm not charged?
Yeah. And I've written a whole chapter on this in my book, because even for women in relationships, they've been in their marriage 20 years and they haven't had sex with their partner without having a drink first.
Oh, look at him. How am I going to have sex? I can imagine some of the jokes people make. Is it that slogan, alcohol, helping ugly people have sex since 1845? But I'm being facetious, but it's a big thing. A lot of people with that identity, alcohol, other substances, gives them, in inverted commas, the confidence. Because I'd ask, is it really confidence? Because from a psychology construct, confidence is one, doing the work, and then two, backing yourself. So are you really confident when you're having alcohol because you're in an altered state? And are you really backing yourself because you can't do it sober?
Yeah, and it's a big one that comes up all the time in terms of whether it's with a partner. I had a client that said to me the other day, I'm so happy on my alcohol-free journey, but it's been 2 years and I still haven't been able to have intimacy with my partner because I just don't feel confident and comfortable enough in the bedroom.
Without alcohol?
Without alcohol, yeah.
Is that common?
Yeah. Yeah. But the irony is, when you're not under the influence of alcohol, for everybody I know that talks about it, the sex is so much better because you can feel your body. And there's research out there that really, talks about this. And so, but if you're not in a relationship with someone where you feel 100% comfortable, or you're dating and it's someone new, it is hard. It's really hard.
Some of the research I've read on alcohol for men as well, you perform so much better when you're not drunk.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's lots and lots, and I've talked about that in the book as well. And so sober dating, and I've guided lots of women through making that decision when they're going online. Do they put down on their profile that they don't drink? And, one of my clients did, and then she had a guy go, oh, you're really hot, but I can't date a non-drinker. And I was just like, well, he's not your person then, is he?
Get rid of him now. You're better to do it now than wasting a couple of days of your life and then having that conversation. So I can see merit in doing that. The statistics that I get off your webpage, recent report by The Lancet called for commercial ban of products linked to causing breast cancer, such as alcohol. So there's nowhere near enough advertising, you say, around this. This is staggering. More than 300,000 Australian women are regularly drinking at high risk levels, consuming 11 or more standard drinks in one sitting at least once a month. And this comes from research you quote from Flinders University. And consuming 11 drinks in one sitting is better known as binge drinking.
And the thing we know is that alcohol use disorder, which is defined as at a mild level, that's about 10 units per week for a woman, has increased over 80% in the last 30 years. So women are drinking more and more. We know that. And my research shows 3 reasons, because I've got a group of 20,000 women and I asked the question, why do you drink or did you drink? And there were 3 reasons that came up time and time again: boredom, stress, and loneliness. So we've got a demographic of midlife women who are bored, stressed, and lonely. And so they're drinking.
That's a phenomenal increase in that period of time. My thoughts on this as well would be the big companies, the alcohol companies, the breweries have also changed. It used to be after a hard day's work, VB, you can get it shearing a sheep, you can get it riding a cow. I don't think they actually say that. Matter of fact, I got it. Now, it was all about men and sport. It's changed a lot, hasn't it? A lot of the marketing now is geared towards women.
Yeah, and I talk about this in the book as well. I did a lot of research on this. So it was 30 years ago that the alcohol industry realized they were not making enough money from women, and they decided to segment their marketing to directly start appealing to women. So that's when we saw the rise of pink drinks. That's when we saw the rise of all the bubbly bottles and things like that. And then there's a research paper by the Cancer Council of WA called The Instagrammability of Pink Drinks, and how it's not coincidence that it was 30 years ago that the marketing towards women came in, and that alcohol use disorder in women has increased so significantly, because we've got this like perfect storm of women being, I would argue, midlife women, the most stressed, the most overwhelmed, the most busy, the most anxious that they've ever been. And then you've got big alcohol coming in going, it's okay, we've got the perfect solution for you, just come in and have a drink.
And low calorie.
Yeah. I mean, there's a drink called Skinny Girl. I've even seen a protein shake now that has alcohol and a certain amount of protein. And I heard recently that 2 brands in the US went to court because they were both fighting to have the word mommy in the name of the drink. So one was called Mummy Juice and one was called Mummy Wine. Like, in my opinion, mummy should not be anywhere near an alcoholic drink, but they were fighting in court to get rights to use it.
But I have heard a lot of mums over the years, and our listeners would have as well, the mummy juice, mummy's special potion, mummy's relaxant.
Yeah. Mummy wine culture is prolific. And I even just look at, Mother's Day, and you see the cards that are out there. One of the stores in Australia that sells pajamas had wine bottles all over the pajamas that said time to wind down. And the little girls out there, what they're getting, the message is that mum needs wine to be able to relax. It's hard being a mum. The only way to reward yourself for being a mum is to drink wine. And we've completely lost sight of the fact that alcohol is in the same carcinogenic category as tobacco. It is a level 1 carcinogen, and yet we promote it, advertise it, market it, and you're peer pressured if you don't consume it.
It's so interesting you pick up on those stats about being level 1 with tobacco, because everyone knows cigarettes is bad for you. You smoke, there's a really high risk you're going to get cancer. But there's a huge link between excessive use of alcohol and cancer and psoriasis and a lot of health challenges. So you've gone through beautifully today. I did do the setup and say, 1, we'll talk about your story, warts and all. 2, the difference between alcohol and grey area drinking. 3, to talk about those impacts, physical, psychological, emotional and financial. You've covered a lot of them as we've gone through. It's not like a podcast where you just go 1, 2, 3, 4. But can you give us the summary of, if anyone's listening to this, and also, before I ask you for the summary, my assumption is grey area drinking higher prevalence in female than men?
I would say it's both. I think they think about 70% of people who drink fall into the category of grey area drinking, where you're not... 70. Yeah. Because it's quite extreme to be a physically dependent alcohol user, and it's quite extreme to be someone that just has a drink every now and then and doesn't really think about alcohol. Most people are in the grey area, but because we live in a society that says you've only got a problem if you tick these boxes, they therefore go, well, my drinking's not a problem. So what most people don't realize is how much alcohol is actually impacting them on a physical, emotional level, and in terms of performance, like as a mum, as a parent, as a worker, in your fitness, just in your overall health. Because if we're just having 1 or 2 drinks a few nights a week, most people think that's more than okay. But I would argue that even 1 or 2 drinks will completely disrupt your sleep. And so then you're not going to ever get your full 10 out of 10 potential and energy the next day. And what I see happen with thousands of people that I've coached now is you get your spark back, you get that light inside of you. It starts firing again, because no one can show up as their best 10 out of 10 self if they're a bit dusty and they've had a terrible sleep. And we don't even realize that we're feeling 5 or 6 out of 10 most of the time, because we've never had a long enough break to know how we might feel without it. And that's why I'm never out there saying, you must never drink. But I'm always out there saying, give it a go and take a break and see how you might feel without it. Because I think you'll be quite surprised.
I would have 2 or 3 drinks on average a week. A lot of weeks I have none. But if it's a week I'm travelling, which I have done a lot this week, I had a red wine on the flight back the other night. Met you that morning, gone back. The lovely flight attendant said a couple of times, you want to drink? No. Do you want to drink? Oh, okay, I'll just have a little red while I'm watching a movie. Would your advice to me, based on what you've seen, be if I really wanted to optimise performance, that even 2 or 3 drinks a week, or someone listening to this who only has 2 or 3? Because the national guidelines now is 7 units. 7 units of alcohol is part of a healthy, balanced lifestyle or nutrition intake for _ most people. You dispute that even a couple of drinks for someone is making an impact? And I'll just underscore that, because often for me it'll be catching up with mates. I cycle, I swim, I do fitness, I work with a few sporting teams. So it's changed a lot. Like, people are surprised how little my athletes drink during the season. In fact, some of them don't touch it. So that's 30 years ago, that image that it's just boozy, get on the cans after a game culture. But yeah, back to the question, would you advise me that I could elevate my performance by cutting it out altogether?
No, I think if you're having 2 units a week, I don't believe that would impact your performance. But if you are drinking consistently and regularly, even if it's 1 or 2 drinks more than that a week, I think that's going to start to impact you. So Canada was the first country that came out in January 23 to say there is no safe amount of alcohol, and they recommend for your health purposes no more than 2 units per week if you want to avoid the risks associated with alcohol. And so I very much go along by those kind of guidelines. 2 or 3 a week, it's not going to have a significant impact, but going above that, and if you have those in one sitting, it is.
It's changed a lot. I can remember when I studied exercise science 20 plus years ago, Sarah, it was 14 units a week, and then it's come down to 7. And now you're saying in Canada it's 2. Be very interesting to watch this space. So to close out, I've loved our discussion, and I haven't followed the script at all, but you've covered everything I want to cover, and we're not finished yet. But obviously the physical impacts of drinking too much, you're going to have low energy levels, you're going to have more body fat. You're in a state, as you said, of fatigue the following day. So the less you move, your mitochondria fall asleep, or at worst die. So it just becomes a vicious cycle physically, and the physical changes. So there's the energy and there's the way you look. So the changes in body shape, you're putting on more fat, losing muscle. So I think the physical ones we've got pretty well covered. Irritability, obviously talk to me about some of the emotional.
And I think that this is the biggest win for me. What happens when we remove alcohol is our world starts to open up. Because when you start every day with, the negative talk of, no, you drank more, or, oh God, I feel like shit, I could just stay in bed for an extra hour. When you start your day like that, your self-talk, your mood, your emotions are never going to be firing. Whereas when you start your day waking up, having had 8 hours of solid restorative sleep, and you're like, oh, right, what do I get to do today? Like, your mindset is so different. And as a result of your mindset being different, your confidence grows. Like, I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about how do you improve self-belief? By keeping the promises you make to yourself. And so if you're promising yourself, I'm not going to drink, and you're sticking to that, then you start to believe in yourself a bit more. And then everything starts to open up, because you start going, well, I've got more time, energy, money. And what else am I going to start doing with all of that now? And I see people like I have switch career, go back to university, set up businesses, take up new hobbies, go into amateur dramatics, take up horse riding, go and join drumming bands. Like, I have just seen the best stories of what happens in people's lives, because they start backing themselves, because you can't back yourself when you're hungover and feeling a bit crap most of the time. But most people don't realize they're feeling that way because they just go, oh, this is just middle age. This is just what you have, what particularly for women. I'm 48 and I am in the best mental, physical, emotional health of my life. But a lot of people I know are like, yeah, you just have to accept it. That's just what happens.
Sarah, we're almost 50 and you put on weight and your energy levels go low and it's just how it is.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
And that's what I love, is that I get to show people, not just tell them, but show them that is not true.
I reckon the biggest one for you, for anyone watching this on our YouTube channel, you'll absolutely see the radiance, the energy, the vitality jumping through the screen. No, not me, through Sarah. Albert Bandura, psychologist, talks about self-efficacy, which is the power to shift or impact your situation. When I asked you that question, you surprised me a little bit. When you go back there, what do you think? And you said shame, and you still feel that. But before that, early in the interview, you said you're so proud of yourself. So it's that self-efficacy. So now when you think of the changes you've made, now when you see the impact you've had on thousands of women, you said before 20,000 women. I know you went on Mamma Mia. One episode, was it 8,000 women contacted you? You literally melted the internet.
Yeah.
You must feel so proud now. You must just feel like a different person.
I do. I am a complete, and you know, you talked earlier in the show about the balance of the extrinsic and intrinsic reward.
Yes.
Is that what? Yeah. And I have that now. I do still get extrinsic reward because I'm so passionate with the purpose of what my job is, but I have such huge intrinsic motivation and intrinsic reward now that quite often I'm so happy. Like you said about having a weekend when you're in bed at 9:30, like, oh my God, I'm like a pig in shit when it's 9:30 on a Friday night and I could go to bed because I could get up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday and go do a 2-hour run. I am like, this is living my best life.
Have you risk of going too far the other way? Now you're so passionate, so enthusiastic that you're just redlining and running a million miles an hour?
Oh, I have to work on that. I absolutely have to work on that because I've just got so much passion and so much energy and not a single day feels like work. And so I have to be, and I have a coach that really helps me to keep my boundaries, look after myself, preserve my nervous system, because I need to keep working on that.
Yeah, I know a guy with a shiny head who will have a chat to you about how to strategically down-regulate as well. Because it is when you're really passionate, and I love your story. And I love, like, you build us up and then 100 days off and then you went back again. And listening to this, I'm sure people go, oh no, does she get to the end? Yes, you do. Well, there's no end. It's a journey and you're on that journey. And now you get to impact thousands and thousands of women. And if people really want to go down this path, I'm not going to steal their thunder. I want them to go do your program. But for someone listening to this who's going, oh yeah, gosh, I didn't realise I am what Sarah calls a grey area drinker. What should they do? What can they do to just jolt? Because it sounds like what you didn't have was a big enough jolt. Even when you smashed up your face, even when you missed your son's birthday, you just kept going back, schema. But what do you do, or how do you get someone to get a jolt just to try and make that short shift?
I think the first thing is don't wait for a rock bottom. It doesn't have to be that bad to decide to change. It's just about going, well, she said that things might be a bit better, so maybe I'll try it. And I always say, if you don't try, you won't know. And so commit to a 30-day, 60-day, 90-day program. Take time off booze, but see it as an experiment and use that information. Keep a wee journal by your bed. Start recording. What's my sleep like? What's my energy like? Is my anxiety reduced? Have my hot flushes reduced? Do I notice I'm going to the gym more? Like, use the data that you get so that at the end you can go, okay, well, which version of me and which version of my life do I like better? Because as the person I am today, I'm allowed to change and I am allowed to be different and I'm allowed to do things differently. And we create a belief at 19 that the only way to socialize and have fun is to drink. But actually, at 49, we can do lots of other things to have fun and to have a good time. It doesn't have to be drinking.
And we'll put a link in the show notes to your program as well. What's your most popular program? So the one when people, so the 8,000 women who listened to Mamma Mia with Mia Friedman and then just bombarded you, what program do you put them on?
So I run women's alcohol-free challenges 4 times a year. And then I have a 30-day program that people can buy at any point. So the challenges are everyone's doing it at the same time together. We have a private group. They get daily Q&A sessions with me, and that works really well. But some people are more private. They don't want to be on social media. And so my 30-day program is one they can just buy off the internet, off my website.
Awesome. And the website?
SarahRusbatch.com.
Sarah, Sarah, Rusbatch, RUSBATCH.com. When we caught up earlier this week in Perth, it would be remiss of me to finish the interview here and go, this is just the grey area drinking chick. Well, you are that. And you're doing some wonderful presentations around helping people live their best life. And I love seeing that evolution you're on now. So you've taken your story, the hero's journey, and it was a long journey, as you said. And now I can see why, talking to you today, I can just see, feel, hear, smell every faculty why you are such a wonderful coach for women in grey area drinking and men, but especially your journey, your story connecting with women. And I can still see that being a big part of what you do. Love that you're also evolving and stepping up, talking about living your best life. What does that look like?
Yeah. And so I've started doing more and more work in the corporate space about introducing the concept of what's holding you back. Everyone has something that's holding them back from fulfilling their potential in life. For some, it's alcohol. For some, it's food. For some, it's not going to bed on time. For some, it's not learning stress management techniques, like whatever it is. And I'm coming in there to talk about, let's start to change that. Let's start to overcome the obstacles so that you can reach your full potential in life, because life is short. And let's not forget that. And we're never too old to create change. And a lot of people know the stuff. Oh, I should drink less. I should eat the right food. I should go to the gym, but they don't do it. And I'm really interested in talking and sharing my tools and techniques around behaviour change, my 3-pillar plan to creating change, what worked for me, what I use to support thousands of people, specifically with alcohol, but it can be applied to any behaviour that we want to change. I've run corporate 30-day wellness programs for individuals to sign up and take time off booze, implement new habits. I'm flying up to a mine site soon to run a 3-hour workshop on my pillars of wellness. And I did a roadshow recently for a big mining company that flew me up to all of their mine sites to talk about grey area drinking. Now, that was an interesting one. Sat in a room with like 200 high-vis men with their arms crossed staring at me. What's this chick going to say?
What's wrong with this shit, huh?
Yeah, it was brilliant. And I felt like, I was really proud of how I delivered that and the response that I got.
I don't know a lot of German, but one of my favourite German words is Mitfreude, which is pleasure through other people's success. And I love seeing what you've done. I love your story. I would love a HR rep, a CEO. We've got a very large slant on corporate audience listening to this. And I know a lot of people, previous guests, have had bookings, coaching, speaking, and even a few have closed a couple of big programs, which I love because there's enough work to go around for everybody. So if you're listening to this and you've got a conference coming up, if you're listening to this and you go, oh, wow, she is so inspiring, and you want Sarah to talk about behaviour change, because that's the thread that I see. And even some of those questions I've been asking you, I'm coming at that with a coaching psychology framework. Your program is so rich, the rigour around that you do, it's embedded in behaviour change. So I don't see you as the grey area drinking chick. I see you as the behaviour change chick, and you just happen to have one niche, which is called grey area drinking. Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because it's so true. And the techniques and tools that I share can be applied to everyone. And I've seen it work, because a lot of my clients swap alcohol for sugar. And I then run sugar programs, and I use exactly the same methodology that I've used in alcohol to get people to change their eating habits. And so I know that these pillars can work across the board.
Let's wrap up this very engaging, illuminating, authentic interview with what I call the flip. I don't always do this, just pull it out at times when it feels appropriate. The flip is there a question, Sarah, you look back that you would like me to have asked or I haven't asked you yet? Or is there a question you'd like to ask me, the flip?
I think maybe one question that you haven't asked would be, what is the actual critical piece to changing your relationship with alcohol? Like, what's the key component? Because motivation and willpower run out, right? And for me, the answer to that question is changing our beliefs around alcohol and changing our beliefs that it's a reward, changing our beliefs that it's the only way to have fun, changing our beliefs that people think we're boring if we don't drink. And when we change our beliefs, we actually completely take out our need for alcohol because they're simply not true. And to just start being aware of the stories we tell ourselves, because so often they are simply stories.
What a beautiful way to end this story. Hey, thank you for your time today. I've really loved the conversation. I love how you've been so authentic and gone deep, and even in a few areas I didn't think. So thank you for being so authentic. Love that we're going to get you doing some work with us with performance intelligence on our Performance Intelligence Academy. Sarah's going to do a few modules. So we'll be bringing this to thousands of our clients with our Performance Intelligence Academy, which is like a coach in your pocket. So I'm really excited to introduce you to our clients across that platform as well. Final message. How do you want to send this out?
Take a break, see how great you can feel, and just remember you don't have to be an alcoholic to decide to change your relationship with alcohol. You can do that at any time, and you might just be amazed at what happens.
Thank you so much for your time today, Sarah.
Thank you.